All right, we're here with you tonight one more time. We're taking clips from the Netflix, it was kind of like a mini series, right, of Jeffrey Dahmer. And this one is called Dahmer and the Devil. Jeffrey Dahmer and the Devil. And this is a scene where Jeffrey Dahmer is in the kitchen with his grandmother, and she's trying to get him to come back to church. She's trying to encourage him. If you read or research behind Jeffrey Dahmer, it's very clear. And some of the people who are really into looking at his life, they say that the grandmother was one of the only people that really showed him unconditional love or true affection and tried to encourage him. Now, most would believe that if demon possession or if devils or a devil was real, surely Jeffrey Dahmer was full of, quote, the devil or demons due to the nature of his crimes. And that's kind of hard to argue with, that's kind of hard to take apart because, when you look at the atrocities, when you look at the depth, the magnitude, the scope of the things that he did, right? Two people, we don't really play the sympathy for the devil card like other evangelicals. But you know what? This one's tough, though. I'm not saying that he was demon-possessed or full of the devil, but this is a hard one to kind of deny that the powers of darkness in whatever capacity, probably in a major capacity, were certainly at work, right?
You could say that. You could also say that each man is possessed by each person, right? In this case, it's a man that we're talking about. That each man is possessed with the darkness of their own heart. And a person who, Jesus has this encounter with a person that he says, I am a man under authority. And we talk in spiritual circles, if you want authority in the church, you've got to be under authority. There isn't a pastor that shouldn't have a pastor because nobody can do it all by themselves. And so there's truth to those things. And in this case, Dahmer isn't free to serve God. He's free to serve what he wants to do. Now, is that demon possession? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that demonic influence? I think it's an easy cop-out to say that it is. Genghis Khan didn't happen too much in history, right? There's only one of him. Hitler didn't happen too much. Mussolini didn't happen much. Just very. But
even in a way though, like he isn't free though, because like they say, as I've looked at the people like Jeffrey Dahmer, like they get to a point where like they can't control it anymore. Like they try to suppress it, they try to keep it down. They go to these little stopgaps so like they won't kill again, but it builds up and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. I'm not saying that he's not responsible for his actions.
It's what he wanted to do.
But there is something that takes a hold of a person that is abnormal. And I'm not saying he's full of the devil either, but it's very complicated stuff.
Absolutely. I don't disagree. And I think maybe that was my only point, is that sometimes, especially in evangelical circles, we can gloss over it and say, oh, well, it must be the devil, right? And so at some point, personal responsibility, Jeffrey Dahmer can choose to do or not do as Jeffrey Dahmer chose to do or not do. And he had that sovereign will. Now, the thing
could have tried to get help.
There's any number of things, right?
You're right.
You see Grandma encouraging him. Like she says, I thought it was telling the line, you're every bit as good as your father. A lot of times, you're going to have the grandmother who's going to be kinder to the grandson than they were to the father.
Yeah, right? I agree with that.
And so she's like, you're every bit as, so she's not saying you're better than your father. Your father was good and you are every bit as you came from good stock. The choices you are making.
Yeah. I see. Yeah, that's great. It is. And I love the way that they portray Grandma because, I lived 3 years in Ohio, like just the way that she talks and the fact that he's doing these awful things like in her house
and she
like kind of doesn't really want to deal with that, and how awful that would be. And I, I've been late 20s, mid 20s, living with grandma. Obviously I wasn't killing and mutilating people, thank God, but I've been that kid that lives with grandma, and grandma's tried to reason with me and help me. And so it is an eerie, dark scene, but it's one of the brighter scenes if you've seen the 10 hours. But grandma is trying to get Dahmer to go back to church, and it is interesting where she says, I just think you need the right girl, Jeff. You find the right girl. She doesn't realize that he's gay, and he's gay like in Milwaukee, like in the 80s, and like you just didn't talk about those things. You didn't go those places. You do anything to just not deal with any of that. And she's completely oblivious to like some of the things that he's wrestling and dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I think evangelicals, we treat church as a panacea, right? Like church will fix everything.
Yes.
But confronting oneself, right? So to me, that's how those two scenes come together. The prison retribution and this scene with grandma. It's almost as if a person like me might consider that at least some of those things grandma said might have been things he was considering when he was sitting in that prison chapel. Like that's the redemptive element.
Like a type of how the word of God will not return void. Like, right? Like how, because, at the end of his life, there was a Church of Christer, and he baptized Dahmer. Dahmer said he wanted to be saved, and he has the most. The reason we know so much about Dahmer is because he told everything. Right? That's very rare in crimes of that magnitude, of that brutal viciousness. Like they just don't say anything, but like he was like an open book to the things that he awful things that he did. It's evident with grandma that God's love was reaching down into the darkest and most horrific parts of our lives and our society and our culture. Because I remember this crime when I was when I was a kid. I remember the trial. I remember all the pictures and awful stuff that happened. And so, but it's so amazing how God's love was trying to reach somebody that was in that dark and dismal place. And what's so interesting is the detective said, when I looked into the face of Jeffrey Dahmer, he said, I didn't see the devil. He said, when I looked into the eyes of Jeffrey Dahmer, he said, I saw the most lonely, pitiful person I have ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. And that is interesting to me. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think that goes along with, that which I was trying to convey is that, sometimes these are ways that people cope with it. Like some people cope with things by drinking, right? Some people cope with things by smoking pot or, playing rock and roll, whatever, right? People compensate for whatever they happen to be going through. His means of compensation was just incredibly horrific. It wasn't natural, normal, or healthy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now, was someone like Jeffrey Dahmer, as grandma says, good deep down?
I mean, what's good?
Well, he's made in the similitude of God, but it's so easy. It's so easy for us. And I think that without the Spirit really working, when you look at the magnitude, the depth, the awfulness of the crimes, I don't know if it's so easy for the flesh to just dismiss that and say he's just nothing more than a monster. He's just nothing more than subhuman. I think it takes a work of the Spirit to see that there was some goodness in him because he's made in the similitude of God. And so we can't just bypass that. So was grandma right or wrong?
I don't think grandma was wrong. I think that she, as you described, that God is looking for the best in us, right?
Yes.
She was looking for the best in him. We're made in the image of God, the similitude of God, the imago Dei. Like we're made, the Bible says that we were created for good works, that we should walk in them. And as you described with your own grandmother, trying to reach out and find a way to connect. I think this is just a person demonstrating the unconditional love of God, and exactly as you described, God was reaching down through this woman, trying to reach a person that in just a few months from that scene taking place, a year and a half or so, would have been.
Well, he would move to, he would have the Oxford apartment, and he would ramp it up
and
tremendously.
That's when it got out of control.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's terrible. You know, there was an attempt to preserve Jeffrey Dahmer's brain, right, in order to see what made him kill, dismember, and eat many of his victims, but it was incinerated. There was a battle between his mother and his father. I believe his mother wanted to save his mind or his brain so it could be analyzed, and the father said, absolutely not, incinerate it. So that's also interesting. But we know that the biblical perspective speaks of the condition of the heart, right? That murder, adulteries, all these depravities, like, they come from the heart, you know. So I don't know if it would have helped anybody to have his brain to analyze it. I don't know.
I mean, what are you going to find in it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like you described, it's the heart, right? That's the, as we would take the biblical perspective, it's the heart that is the corrupting thing, not necessarily the mind. You know, the Bible has descriptions of people eating other people. Like,
Cannibalism. Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons that he said that he ate his victims and many others who sadly have succumbed to cannibalism is that, you know, so that they would never leave him, that they would always be a part of him, to internally ingest them because of that loneliness. That once again, it's so interesting that the detective said that. He said, I didn't see a devil. I didn't see a Satan. I didn't see a beast with horns. He said, I saw a lonely, miserable person, the most lonely, miserable person that I've ever seen in my entire life. He said he had no friends. He never did anything with anyone. And that is tragic. And, you know, I'm not trying to have sympathy, like some might say, for but Jeffrey Dahmer, and you say, well, why would you even want to look at something like this as a Christian? Why would you even want to handle something like? No, we have to look at these things because these things are important, and we you know, it's very important for us to kind of look at these concepts because, you know, Dahmer and the devil, like, these are very, very real ideas, and it's easy to cross the signals or cross the lines, so to speak. And it's important that we analyze these things, at least from time to time. I think.
I would agree. You know, I think one of the reasons why we want it to be a devil is because that's insulation for us. Because it's a way that we can say, well, that could never happen to me.
Yeah.
I could never, you know, reach those depths or be unkind that way. Like, I have perfect insulation from that, and I would never, ever, ever do that. But the reality is,
apart from the grace of God, you have no idea what you're even capable of doing, right?
I mean, if you've committed murder in your heart, Jeffrey just did it outside of his body, right?
Yes. Well, thank you for being a part of these, and we thank you for watching. We know it's a little difficult subject matter, but, you know, we like to take on difficult things. You know, we're not going to give you the Hobby Lobby, you know, Jesus bumper sticker stuff here. And so be sure to like and watch and support. God bless you. Good night.
Good night. There you go.